Thank you, Paul-Roux, for coming through. So, first of all, share with our viewers the picture as you see it in terms of property values and the trends that you have been watching.
Godfrey, we have quite a relatively small property market compared to some of the international ones, and powerhouse provinces like Gauteng and the Western Cape play quite a big part. Currently, there's about 6.7 million properties, of which the Western Cape and Gauteng alone makes up more than half.
But also property values in South Africa.
Number of properties, close to 2/3 of property values in South Africa are located just in those two provinces.
Those two places. Let me just stop you there and ask you to give me values in terms of what you're saying is half and what is the national number.
So there's about 8 million formal properties in South Africa. That excludes all the informal settlements.
Okay.
Of which 6.7 we reckon is residential property, and the total value of them, our data scientists value each of those properties individually, and if we accumulate them, it gets to 5.4 trillion rand.
Total for South Africa?
For South Africa.
And half of that resides in Johannesburg and Cape Town?
Close to 2/3 of the
total. Close to 2/3 Johannesburg and Cape Town.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's quite interesting and quite important for us to track what happens in these provinces, and the third largest province is KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah.
But even at a more micro level, the 5 biggest municipalities makes up 2/3 of the value. So
sure.
That City of Joburg, City of Cape Town is the largest with over R1 trillion worth of value.
Cape Town has got bragging rights over Johannesburg in terms of property value.
It's quite a large municipality, so hold on, right? So City of Joburg, if you combine City of Joburg and Ekurhuleni, it's actually bigger than Cape Town. But because it's 2 separate municipalities, and then Tshwane is also on the list, and eThekwini is the 5th largest municipality. So these microcosms are quite interesting to track. Now, what's happened in the Western Cape, and Cape Town specifically, is since 2013, it's broken away from the rest of the property market, and we've seen that the trend has continued into double-digit growths for the Western Cape.
There's demand still for property in Cape Town.
There was an increased demand, there was a bit of semigration, but also they have quite a large area of the city that's in a landlocked area, so you can't, the suppliers, the developers can't respond quick enough to fill the gaps. So we saw double-digit growth for about 3 years, and then in 2018 it started losing steam and is coming down. And it's now currently, the property price growth in the Western Cape is at about 5.7% year on year.
Inflation still, I'll take that, thank you very much.
Still better than CPI, whereas the rest of the market grows at around 3.4%, 3.3%. So it is still better, but it's getting closer to the national average.
Right.
And there's a couple of reasons for that.
Yeah.
The first is that if you have these temporary demand booms caused by semigration, it creates this double-digit growth and a breakaway from the national average. But at some point, if there's not an underlying economic growth that goes with it, so new wealth coming into the market, it starts to lose steam. So the only way you can see a next evolution of that growth is if economic growth happens.
Right.
So
what about this other reason that we keep hearing, that part of it is fueled by rich foreigners who come in and are buying those properties by the wine estates and obviously by the ocean, etc., etc.?
Yeah, so we do see some of that. It's not as severe as people think it is. In certain areas like Clifton and the rest of the Atlantic seaboard, it's probably more proliferated than other areas. Yeah. But the vast majority of our property market is driven by the workforce, by people that's actually working and needs to stay close to their offices or their places of work.
Absolutely. You may not have heard the previous interview that I had with, did you hear it?
I heard part of it,
yes, where he was talking about there are how many? $48,800 millionaires in South Africa. Some of them are looking outside for options, etc., etc. But people want to know, so where is the richest place to live in South Africa?
So it depends. If you really want to look at the most expensive areas, Llandudno has an average property or a Lightstone valuation of close to 20 million.
This is in Cape Town.
This is in Cape Town on the Atlantic seaboard. We did a specific study for Cape Town, but generally the Atlantic seaboard and the Old South in Cape Town are normally in the top 10. And then obviously Sandown in Joburg and Blair Gowrie in Tshwane sometimes makes the top 10 list. But generally Atlantic seaboard, Old South. If you go and look at the most expensive street, there's a really small street in the Old South in Belombre with an average property value of over 40 million.
40 million rand.
Yeah.
Average property price.
There is obviously some risk in those numbers because the street is so short.
What's the name of the street?
The name of the street is Paul-Roux Road. It's quite a difficult name too.
Okay, it is. I can see it. B-A-B-E-A-U-V-A-I-S.
Yeah.
Road. Belombre.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these are quite volatile. Last year, the highest valued road was Nettleton Road in Clifton. So it moves around because there's not a lot of transactions that happens there. So it's quite difficult to value the
properties there
on an average.
So maybe we need to do that monopoly board. You know, Clifton is the most expensive property when you're buying.
Elof Street isn't right up there anymore. That I can tell you.
It's changed. Okay, so that's in Cape Town. So again, as you say, so these are on the seaboards, right?
Yeah.
And when you come to Johannesburg?
So in Johannesburg, obviously where we are now in Sandton, the surrounding areas here, because it's a major business hub, it attracts quite large property price values in the areas around here. Mm-hmm. And then you have certain estates that's done quite well in not just in Gauteng, but also in the Western Cape, as people seek out the benefits of estates.
So it's your is it Sandton or Sandown? Which one is it?
So Sandton is the town, Sandown is the suburb.
Okay, yes.
But there's quite a lot of suburbs. So generally property prices don't follow suburban lines to the T, so it spills over. So as long as it's close to major business districts, that's normally when things start going well. But if you look at the highest growing suburbs, it's not those expensive ones. So
where is the growth?
So in the Western Cape, we saw that the double-digit growth suburbs were all, or mostly on the outlying areas, close to Hermanus or up the West Coast, or it's not close to the city of Cape Town.
People are moving out.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to grow 10% on a 40 million rand suburb, 100%. Right? So it's normally people move out and they look for higher or lower valued but more value for money areas further away. And HR practices are evolving. People don't need to stay that close to their work in a lot of 100%. Roles.
So one of the things that surprised me about your figures is that there apparently is a big difference between your standalone homes and your estates. Your estates being 3 times the average. These are units, right? The average price that you find for a standalone. Explain that to me.
Yeah, so estates do tend to be more expensive. So on average, the average freehold property in South Africa is close to 800,000 rand.
This is my home where I close the gate and I'm alone at night.
Yes, but remember there's quite a large portion, almost half of properties are worth less than 500,000 rand. And that's often something we forget, is that there's a massive affordable market on the lower end. But on average, freehold properties are around 800,000 and estate properties are over 2 million on average.
And we're talking about almost same price, same size, right?
Yeah, it would be standard freehold properties. And then, what we've seen over the last couple of years is that estates are increasingly taking up a larger proportion of the value of the total property market. It's currently sitting at 18.3%. Yeah. A year ago, it was closer to 15%. So it's increasing its capture of the market.
So we must all make sure that wherever we are, we make those areas estates. Put a few boom gates.
And that's what a lot of people have done. We have started classifying those community closed areas as their separate estates, although it doesn't necessarily have a golf course or something in the middle.
Something fancier than that. Absolutely. Paul-Roux, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Fascinating study. That's Paul-Roux de Kock. He is Analytics Director at Lightstone.